Are you serious? I shouted, my voice echoing through the quiet of my living room as I glared out the window. There, bold as brass, sat a gleaming silver SUV, parked dead center in my driveway. Not my truck, not my wife's sedan. No, this was the handiwork of Karen, my next-door neighbor, and the self-appointed dictator of our HOA. Her guests, decked out in their cocktail dresses and pressed suits, were spilling out of her house for one of her infamous dinner parties. And apparently, my driveway was now her personal overflow lot. I live in a sleepy suburban neighborhood called Willow Creek, where the houses are neat, the lawns are manicured, and everyone knows the unwritten rules of decency. Your driveway? That's sacred ground. You don't park on someone else's property without asking. Just like you don't borrow their lawnmower or let your dog poop on their grass. But Karen, she operated like she owned the whole block. This wasn't her first offense, either. For the 2 years I'd lived here, she'd been a thorn in my side, nitpicking my lawns, grass height, apparently half an inch too tall, whining about my mailbox's unapproved navy blue color, even leaving passive-aggressive notes about my dog Rusty's system, barking too loudly. I'd had enough. That evening, I marched across the lawn to Karen's house, my blood pressure spiking with every step. Her front porch was decked out with twinkling fairy lights, and the sound of clinking glasses and laughter spilled through her open windows. I knocked the hard. Karen answered, her fake smile as polished as her overpriced chandelier. Oh, hi Mark, what's the matter? She chirped, clutching a glass of white wine. There's a car in my driveway, I said, struggling to keep my tone civil. Your guest's car. Her smile didn't waver, but her eyes glinted with that condescending look she'd perfected. Oh, that's just Linda's SUV. It's only for a few hours. Mark, you don't need your driveway right now, do you? The street's so crowded tonight, I clenched my fists. Move it, Karen, now. She sighed, like I was the one being unreasonable. Fine, I'll ask her to move it after dessert. Relax, it's not a big deal, not a big deal. I could feel my face heating up. This wasn't just about a car. It was about Karen's endless power trips, her need to control everyone and everything in Willow Creek. I'd seen her bully other neighbors finding Mrs. Jenkins for her tacky flamingo statue, harassing Tom about his unsightly pickup truck. But this time, she'd crossed the wrong guy. I stormed back home, my mind racing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the couch, Rusty curled up beside me. As I stewed over Karen's smug face, my wife, Sarah, noticed my mood. You okay, babe? She asked, setting down her book. No, I muttered. Karen's gone too far this time. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Connage system. What are you going to do about it? Write a strongly worded letter to the HOA. She was teasing, but I could tell she was worried I'd do something rash. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Something better. The idea hit me like a lightning bolt. I didn't want to just move the car or file a complaint Karen would probably ignore. I wanted something bold, something permanent, something that would make her think twice before messing with me again. I turned to Sarah, a grin spreading across my face. I'm gonna pave the driveway with bricks. Tonight, her jaw dropped. You're what, Mark? That's insane. Do you even know how to do that? Nope, I admitted, but I'll figure it out. I'm done with her games. By midnight, I was on the phone with my buddy Jake, who's always up for a wild, plan your nuts. Man, he laughed when I explained, but I'm in. Let's make Karen cry. The next morning, I woke up with a fire in my gut. This wasn't just about moving a car or whining to the HOA board Karen controlled. I wanted something bold, something that would hit her where it hurt, her obsession with appearances and control. The plan was to transform my boring asphalt driveway into a brick masterpiece, a fortress that screamed, stay off my land, and I'd do it in one night, right under her nose. Before her 6 a.m. jog, I called my buddy Jake, who's always game for a bit of chaos. You're out of your mind. He laughed when I pitched the idea over the phone. Paving a whole driveway, in one night, you ever laid a brick in your life? Nope, I admitted, but I'm not letting Karen win this one. You in or what? Obviously, he said. This is gonna be epic. By 9 a.m., Jake was at my house, still chuckling as we piled into my truck and headed to the hardware store. The place was a maze of tools and materials, but we were on a mission. We loaded up with stacks of red clay bricks, hundreds of them, enough to cover my 20 by 30 foot driveway. I grabbed bags of sand for the base, cement mix for stability, and rented a heavy-duty tamper to pack it all down. The cashier, a grizzled guy named Hank, raised an eyebrow as we rolled up with 3 carts. Big project. Huh, you could say that, I replied, tossing in a couple of shovels and a level for good measure. The total came to just over $800, a small price to pay for sweet revenge. Back home, we turned my garage into command central. Jake cracked open a soda and started unloading bricks while I sketched out the plan on a notepad. Why bricks, though, he asked, wiping sweat from his brow. Why not just, put up a gate or something? Gates can be ignored, I said, stacking bricks into neat piles. Bricks are permanent. They're heavy, they look classy, and they'll make Karen's head explode. Plus, they're a pain to park on without noticing. She wants to treat my driveway like her personal lot. Let's see her guests try that on a herringbone pattern. Jake grinned. You're a mad genius, man. The plan was ambitious. Wait until Karen's party ended, ensure the SUV was gone, tow truck on speed dial if needed, and pave the entire driveway before dawn. It was a tight timeline, less than 12 hours to pull off a job that professionals would take days to complete. We'd need to level the ground, spread a sand base, lay the bricks in a tight pattern, and pack it all down. Oh, and do it quietly. Enough not to wake the neighborhood. Sarah, my wife, wandered into the garage, eyeing the chaos. You're actually doing this? She asked, arms crossed. You're gonna throw out your back, and I'm not nursing you through it. Worth it, I said, hauling a bag of sand. Karen's been asking for this. She shook her head, but couldn't hide a smirk. You're insane, but I kinda love it. Just don't get us kicked out of the neighborhood. To make sure we weren't totally clueless, Jake pulled up YouTube tutorials on bricklaying while I measured the driveway with a tape measure. The videos made it look simple. Level the ground, spread sand, lay bricks, tamp it down. But the scale of our project was daunting. My driveway was 600 square feet, and each brick was about 4 by 8 inches. Quick math told me we'd need around 2,000 bricks, laid perfectly, in one night. This is gonna suck, Jake muttered, watching a tutorial where a guy made it look effortless. Spites, a great motivator, I shot back, marking the driveway's edges with spray paint. Why spent the afternoon prepping? Jake sorted bricks by size and color to ensure a consistent look, while I cleared debris from the driveway and dug out uneven patches of asphalt. Sarah brought us sandwiches, shaking her head every time she passed by. You're gonna need a chiropractor and a lawyer, she teased. By evening, we were as ready as we'd ever be. The garage was packed with materials, our tools were lined up, and we'd even rigged up a couple of portable floodlights for the night shift. I called a local tow company to confirm they could move the SUV if it was still there after party. No problem, the dispatcher said. We deal with HOA nonsense all the time. As the sun set, Jake and I sat on my porch, sipping coffee and psyching ourselves up. This is either going to be legendary or a total disaster, he said, cracking his knuckles. Legendary, I said firmly. Karen's about to learn who she's messing with. We checked the HOA bylaws one last time, just to be safe. Karen loved weaponizing the rules, but I had done my homework. The bylaws were vague about driveways, only mentioning aesthetic standards and prior approval for major changes. My herringbone brick design was going to be gorgeous, way classier than Karen's tacky garden gnomes. If she tried to fight me, I'd have the neighborhood's support. As 10 p.m. rolled around, we watched Karen's house. Her guests were still milling about, but the SUV was still in my driveway. I called the tow company, who promised to be there. By 11, my heart was pounding, not just from nerves, but from the thrill of what we were about to pull off. This wasn't just about a driveway anymore. It was about standing up to a bully who'd been pushing everyone around for too long. As the clock struck 11 p.m., Karen's party finally wound down. The silver SUV was still in my driveway, its chrome rims glinting under the streetlights like a taunt. I'd had enough waiting. I called the tow company, and within 20 minutes, a burly driver named Mike rolled up in a flatbed truck. HOA nonsense. Huh, he said, hooking up the SUV with practiced ease. Seen this kind of thing before. Good luck, man. By 11:30, the SUV was gone, parked legally on the street. Jake and I sprang into action, adrenaline pumping like we were pulling off a heist. The neighborhood was dead quiet, the only sounds the occasional hoot of an owl and the hum of our floodlights, which we'd rigged to a portable generator to avoid tripping the house's breakers. We'd planned this like a military operation. Clear the old asphalt, level the ground, spread a sand base, lay the bricks in a herringbone pattern, and tamp it all down before Karen's 6 a.m. jog. We started by attacking the driveway with shovels and a rented jackhammer. The old asphalt was cracked in places, so we tore up the worst spots, creating a flat canvas. Sweat dripped as we worked, the jackhammer's roar muffled by the late hour and our attempts to keep it low. Hope Karen's not a light sleeper, Jake whispered, grinning, as he hauled chunks of asphalt to a pile in my backyard. By midnight, we'd cleared enough to start the sand base. We poured bag after bag, spreading it with rakes until it was smooth and even. The YouTube tutorials had made this part look easy, but in practice, it was grueling. The sand kept shifting, and we had to keep checking with a level to ensure it was perfect. If we screw this up, the bricks won't sit right, I said, wiping my brow. Dude, we're already in too deep. Jake replied, dumping another bag, no turning back. At 1 a.m., we began laying bricks. The herringbone pattern was my idea, classy, intricate, and a subtle middle finger to Karen's obsession with aesthetic standards. Each brick had to be placed just right, angled at 45 degrees, with a half-inch gap for sand to lock them in. The first few rows were shaky. My hands weren't used to this kind of precision, but we found a rhythm. Jake would set a brick, I'd tap it into place with a rubber mallet, and we'd move on. The clink of each brick was like music, a small victory against Karen's tyranny. Sarah poked her head out at 2 a.m., wrapped in a robe, holding a tray of water bottles and snacks. "You two are ridiculous," she said, but her eyes sparkled with amusement. "Don't wake the whole neighborhood." "Okay, no promises," I said, grabbing a water. She stayed for a bit, watching us work, her laughter cutting through the night when Jake accidentally knocked over a stack of bricks. "You're gonna owe me a spa day for this," she teased before heading back inside. By 3 a.m., we were halfway done, but disaster struck. Jake, in a moment of exhaustion, fumbled a brick, and it landed square on his foot. "Son of a..." "Hi," he yelped, hopping around like a cartoon character. The sound echoed, and I froze, half expecting Karen's porch light to flick on. It didn't. Jake collapsed onto the grass, clutching his foot. "I'm fine," he groaned, but his face said otherwise. Sarah reappeared with an ice pack. "Told you this was a bad idea," she said, but she helped Jake prop his foot up while I kept laying bricks. We couldn't stop. Time was ticking. By 4 a.m., my back was screaming. My hands were raw, and the pile of bricks seemed endless. But the driveway was taking shape, its red herringbone pattern gleaming under the floodlights. "This is actually looking good," Jake said, limping back to help. We pushed through, fueled by spite and Red Bull. At 5 a.m., we started tamping the bricks down with the rented machine, its low rumble vibrating through the ground. Every muscle ached, but the sight of the nearly finished driveway kept us going. By 5:30 a.m., we laid the final brick. We stepped back, panting, and admired our work. The driveway was a masterpiece, smooth, sturdy, and undeniably badass. It was a fortress that screamed, "This is my space." We cleaned up fast, hauling leftover sand and tools to the garage. The floodlights went off, and we collapsed on my front lawn, staring at the sky as it turned a faint pink. "We did it," Jake said, still clutching his ice pack. "Damn right we did," I replied, my voice hoarse but triumphant. All that was left was to wait for Karen's morning jog and her inevitable meltdown. At 6:05 a.m., I was perched on my porch, coffee mug in hand, heart pounding with anticipation. The air was crisp, the neighborhood still asleep, except for the faint sound of birds waking up. My new brick driveway gleamed under the early morning light, its herringbone pattern a work of art, classy, bold, and impossible to ignore. I'd barely slept, my muscles ached from the overnight marathon, but the thought of Karen's reaction made it all worth it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, the payoff for our insane, spite-fueled mission. Right on cue. Karen jogged around the corner in her neon green tracksuit, her ponytail bouncing like a metronome. She was a creature of habit, always out at 6 a.m. sharp, parading through Willow Creek like she owned every blade of grass. I leaned back in my chair, pretending to sip my coffee casually, but my eyes were locked on her. She didn't notice at first, her gaze fixed on the sidewalk as she jogged. Then, as she passed my house, her head snapped up, her feet stuttered to a stop, and her jaw dropped so fast I thought it might hit the pavement. What is this?" she shrieked, her voice piercing the morning calm like a siren. Her eyes bugged out, darting over the sea of red bricks that had replaced my boring asphalt driveway overnight. I set my mug down, feigning surprise. "Oh, hey, Karen, just a little home improvement. You like it?" Her face turned a shade of purple. I didn't know was humanly possible. She stormed across my lawn, ignoring the dew soaking her pristine sneakers, and planted herself at the edge of the driveway, hands on her hips. "This is an eyesore," she bellowed, waving her arms like she was directing traffic. "It's not HOA approved. You can't just change your entire driveway overnight. This is a violation." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, and gave her my best innocent smile. "Funny, you didn't seem to mind my driveway when your guests were parking on it last night. Thought I'd make it a bit more memorable." Her eyes narrowed to slits, and for a moment, I thought steam might actually come out of her ears. "You think you're clever, Mark? You're going to regret this. I'm calling an emergency HOA meeting, and you'll be fined for this. This monstrosity. You'll have to rip it out and restore the original asphalt." I shrugged, sipping my coffee. "Go ahead, Karen, check the bylaws." I did. No rule against bricks, just some vague stuff about aesthetic standards. "And let's be real, this looks way better than your tacky garden gnomes." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, no words coming out. I'd hit a nerve. Those gnomes, with their creepy painted faces, were her pride and joy, and everyone in Willow Creek knew they were an eyesore. She pointed a trembling finger at me. "This isn't over, Mark. You'll hear from the board." She spun on her heel, nearly tripping over a sprinkler, and jogged off, muttering about standards and fines. I leaned back, grinning, ear to ear. The bylaws were my secret weapon. I'd spent hours the previous day combing through the HOA handbook, and while Karen loved to throw her weight around, the rules on driveways were flimsy. Nothing specific about materials, only a clause about maintaining aesthetic harmony. My herringbone pattern was sleek, professional, and undeniably gorgeous. If anything, it raised the neighborhood's property values. By 7 a.m., My phone buzzed with an email from the HOA, marked urgent. Karen hadn't wasted time. The subject line read, unauthorized driveway modification. The email demanded, I cease all unapproved alterations and submit a formal request for review, or face potential fines and legal action. I laughed out loud. Legal action for a driveway. Karen was grasping at straws. Sarah joined me on the porch, still in her pajamas, shaking her head. She's gonna make our lives hell. You know, she said, but her smirk told me she was enjoying this as much as I was. Let her try, I said. She's got nothing. As the morning wore on, neighbors started to notice. Old Mr. Thompson, who walked his poodle every morning, stopped to admire the driveway. Well, damn Mark, he said, adjusting his glasses. This is nicer than my living room floor. Karen's gonna lose her mind. He chuckled and snapped a photo. By noon, word had spread like wildfire. Neighbors I barely knew were strolling by, some pretending to check their mailboxes, others openly gawking. Looks better than Karen's no marmy, said Lisa, who lived across the street and had her own run-ins with Karen over her kid's basketball hoop. She took a selfie with the driveway, captioning it, #new neighborhood vibes for her Instagram. Karen, meanwhile, was in full war mode. I saw her pacing her front yard, phone glued to her ear, no doubt rallying her HOA loyalists, but I wasn't worried. I'd done my homework, and the driveway was a masterpiece. Plus, I had a secret weapon, the neighborhood's growing resentment of Karen's reign. She'd bullied too many people for too long, finding Mrs. Jenkins for her flamingo statue, hassling Tom over his truck. My driveway was becoming a symbol of rebellion. That afternoon, Jake swung by, still limping from his brick-dropping incident. Worth it yet? He asked, admiring our handiwork. Oh, it's worth it, I said, showing him Karen's email. She's throwing a tantrum, but she's got no leg to stand on. He laughed. Man, I'd pay to see her face at the HOA meeting. You gonna fight her? Fight, I grinned. I'm gonna win. By mid-morning, Willow Creek was buzzing. My brick driveway, a gleaming red herringbone masterpiece, had become the talk of the neighborhood, and Karen's meltdown was just the opening act. As I sipped my second cup of coffee on the porch, neighbors started drifting by, their curiosity barely disguised. Old Mr. Thompson, who walked his poodle every morning, stopped dead in his tracks, his glasses slipping down his nose. Well, I'll be damned, Mark, he said, scratching his head. This is fancier than my kitchen tiles. You really did this in one night. Yup, I said, grinning, had to make a point. He chuckled, snapping a photo with his ancient flip phone. Karen's gonna have a stroke. Good for you, son. Next came Lisa from across the street, who'd been battling Karen for years over her kid's basketball hoop. She pulled out her phone, snapping a selfie with the driveway. This is iconic, she said, already typing a caption for Instagram. #Karen got served #driveway goals. She leaned in, lowering her voice. You know she'll fine me $50 last month for my kids leaving chalk on the sidewalk. This is justice. Word spread like wildfire. By noon, half the neighborhood had wandered by, some pretending to check their mailboxes, others openly gawking. Tom, who lived 2 houses down and had been hassled by Karen over his pickup truck, stopped by with a 6-pack of beer. You're a legend, Mark, he said, handing me a cold one. This driveway's nicer than anything Karen's ever done. She's been lording over us for too long. I clinked my bottle against his. Here's to sticking it to her. The driveway wasn't just a renovation, it was a rebellion. Karen's reign as HOA tyrant had left a trail of resentment. She'd find Mrs. Jenkins for her tacky flamingo statue, nagged the Wilsons about their unapproved porch swing, and even tried to ban holiday lights for being too bright. My bricks were a rallying cry, a symbol that someone had finally stood up to her. By afternoon, my inbox pinged with another HOA email, this one from Karen herself, announcing an emergency meeting to address my unauthorized driveway alteration. The email was dripping with her usual self-righteous tone, threatening fines and further action if I didn't restore the original asphalt. I laughed out loud. Sarah, reading over my shoulder, shook her head. She's not gonna let this go. Mark, you sure you're ready for the fight? Oh, I'm ready, I said. I'd checked the bylaws front to back. The rules were vague on driveways, only mentioning aesthetic harmony and prior approval for major changes. My herringbone pattern was stunning, way classier than Karen's gnome-infested yard. If she wanted a fight, I'd bring it. The HOA meeting was set for the following evening at the community center, a bland beige building where Karen held court like a petty monarch. Jake, still limping from his brick-dropping mishap, swung by to strategize. You gonna show up and face her? He asked, sprawled on my couch with an ice pack on his foot. Damn right, I said. She's got no case, and half the neighborhood's. On our side, the meeting was a circus. Karen stood at the front, clutching a clipboard, her voice shrill as she presented her case. This unauthorized driveway is a blatant violation of our community standards, she declared, pointing to a blurry photo of my bricks projected on a screen. It's an eyesore, and it sets a dangerous precedent for rogue renovations. I stood up, holding a copy of the bylaws. Karen, the rules don't ban brick driveways. They say changes need to maintain aesthetic harmony. Look at my driveway, it's gorgeous. Half the neighborhood agrees. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Lisa raised her hand. He's right. That driveway's the best looking thing on the block. Unlike those creepy gnomes in your yard. Karen, laughter erupted, and Karen's face went crimson. Tom chimed in. Yeah, and maybe if you stopped fining us for every little thing, people wouldn't be so fed up. Mark's driveway is a win for all of us. The board, a mix of Karen's loyalists and feed-up neighbors, was split, but the tide was turning. Mrs. Jenkins, usually quiet, stood up. I've lived here 20 years, and I'm tired of Karen's nonsense. That driveway stays. The vote was close, but my bricks won, pending a retroactive aesthetic approval. Form of formality I filled out with a smirk. Karen stormed out, her clipboard trembling in her hands. For the first time, her power was slipping. Since then, Karen's been silent, her guests avoiding my driveway like it's radioactive. The neighborhood's vibe has shifted. People wave at me now, some even stopping to chat about their own Karen horror stories. My driveway stands as a monument to standing up to bullies, a red brick middle finger to HOA tyranny. Jake still brags about his bruised foot, calling it his battle scar. Sarah's already joking about my next move, which, it gonna be a moat, a drawbridge. I grinned, thinking about it. Maybe, let's see if Karen tries anything else.